Tell me about a time you had to explain a delay. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and team leads. Interviewers ask this question to understand how you communicate delays professionally, whether you raise problems early, how you explain impact without making excuses, how you manage stakeholder expectations, how you provide a mitigation plan, how you handle pressure when timelines change, how you maintain trust with product owners, QA, managers, or business teams. This question is especially important for check Java developers, check backend developers, check Spring Boot developers, check full stack developers, check senior software developers, team leads, check Agile teams, check product-focused teams. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S, situation, explain the background. T, task, explain your responsibility. A, action, explain what you personally did. R, result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section, because interviewers want to understand how you communicated the delay, what options you provided, and how you reduce the impact. Question: tell me about a time you had to explain a delay. Example 1. Explaining a delay due to unclear requirement situation. In one sprint, I was working on a customer profile update API. The initial requirement looked straightforward, but during implementation, I noticed that the acceptance criteria did not clearly define which fields were editable by normal users and which fields were admin only. Task: I needed to explain to the product owner, QA, and Scrum Master that the story might take longer because the authorization rules needed clarification before coding could be completed safely. Action: I raised the delay risk early instead of waiting until the end of the sprint. I explained that the delay was not because the development work was blocked completely, but because implementing the wrong authorization logic could create security and rework risk. I clearly explained the unclear areas. Check required fields, optional fields, admin-only fields, validation messages, authorization rules, audit logging, error responses. Then, I explained the impact. QA could test against the wrong behavior. Front-end and back-end behavior could become inconsistent. Normal users might get access to restricted updates. Rework could happen later in the sprint. I proposed a short clarification meeting with the product owner and QA. After the meeting, we updated the acceptance criteria and documented the final role-based behavior. Then I completed the back-end changes and tests. Result: the story took slightly longer than originally expected, but the team avoided building the wrong behavior. QA had clear test scenarios. The feature was delivered correctly and securely. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows early delay communication, requirement clarification, security awareness, stakeholder alignment, avoiding rework, professional ownership. Example 2. Explaining a delay due to external dependency situation. In one project, our Spring Boot service depended on an API owned by another internal team. During planning, we expected the downstream API to be available in the QA environment early in the sprint. However, the endpoint was not deployed on time. Task: I needed to explain the delay to the product owner and Scrum Master and show what work could continue while the dependency was pending. Action: I first confirmed the status with the downstream team so I had accurate information. Then I explained the delay clearly. I said that our development work could continue using the agreed API contract, but end-to-end testing would be delayed until the downstream endpoint was available. I separated the blocked and unblocked work. Unblocked work included client, implementation, client, request mapping, response mapping, timeout handling, error handling, unit testing, mock-based testing. Blocked work included real integration testing, QA end-to-end testing, final error response validation, environment verification. I proposed a mitigation plan. Use mock responses temporarily. Confirm the API contract with the downstream team. Prepare integration tests in advance. Track endpoint availability daily. Schedule QA testing as soon as the endpoint was deployed. Result: stakeholders understood the reason for the delay and what was being done to reduce the impact. Development continued instead of stopping completely. When the downstream API became available, integration testing was completed quickly. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows perfect dependency management, clear delay explanation, separating blocked and unblocked work, mitigation planning, cross-team communication, delivery ownership. Example 3. Explaining a delay due to production bug fix situation. In one sprint, I was working on a planned feature when a production bug was reported. The bug affected report totals for certain date ranges and required immediate investigation. Task: I needed to explain to the product owner that my planned sprint task would be delayed because the production issue had higher priority. Action: I communicated the situation as soon as I understood the severity. I explained what production issue was reported, why it was affected, why it was higher priority, what sprint work would be delayed, what timeline impact I expected, what support I needed from the team. I avoided making excuses. I framed it as a priority trade-off. The team could either continue the planned story or address the production issue first to protect users and business reporting accuracy. I also gave a mitigation plan. Check. Investigate root cause immediately. Provide status updates during the day. Fix and test the issue. Ask another developer to pick up part of my sprint task if possible. Adjust sprint scope if needed. Result: the product owner agreed to prioritize the production issue. We fixed the report calculation problem and added regression tests. The planned feature was delayed, but stakeholders understood the reason and supported the priority change. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows: check. Priority management, production ownership, clear stakeholder communication, no excuses, realistic timeline impact, user impact focus. Example 4. Explaining a delay due to hidden technical complexity situation. In one sprint, I was assigned a report feature that seemed simple at first. After reviewing the requirement, I found hidden complexity around date filtering, time zone handling, large data volume, and export behavior. I needed to explain that the original estimate was too optimistic and that the story needed more time or scope adjustment. Action: I gathered details before communicating the delay. I identified the hidden complexity: calculation rules, date range behavior, business time zone, large data volume, database query performance, export format, QA test data, regression testing. Then I explained the issue to the product owner and Scrum Master. I said that the feature was not just a simple display change. The backend had to calculate accurate totals and handle edge cases correctly. I proposed options: extend the story timeline, split the story into smaller parts, deliver basic report first, move export functionality to a later sprint, add performance testing before release. I recommended splitting the story. The first story would include the backend calculation API and basic UI display. The next story would include export and advanced filters. Result: the product owner agreed to split the story. The team avoided rushing a complex feature. The first version was delivered with better quality, and the remaining work was planned properly. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows: explaining hidden complexity, estimation adjustment, scope management, product owner collaboration, realistic planning, protecting quality. Example 5. Explaining a delay due to failed QA testing situation. In one project, I completed a backend API feature and expected it to move quickly through QA. During testing, QA found that one edge case failed when an optional field was missing. Task: I needed to explain the delay to the product owner and QA because the story could not be accepted until the issue was fixed and retested. Action. I first reproduced the issue locally using QA's test data. Then I communicated the delay clearly. I explained what QA found, why the issue happened, what part of the API was affected, whether other flows were impacted, what fix was needed, how long retesting might take, what regression tests would be added. I avoided minimizing the issue. Even though it was an edge case, it could affect real users if released. I fixed the null safe handling and added tests for optional field present, optional field missing, invalid request, valid request, regression scenario. I then asked QA to retest the original case and related scenarios. Result: the story acceptance was delayed, but the defect was fixed before production. QA verified the fix successfully. The regression tests helped prevent the same issue from returning. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows quarantine, transparency with QA findings, ownership of defect, clear explanation, regression testing, quality mindset, release safety. Example 6. Explaining a delay due to environment issue situation. In one sprint, QA testing for a feature was delayed because the QA environment had configuration issues. The application deployed successfully, but a required environment variable for an external service was missing. Task: I needed to explain the delay to QA, the Scrum Master, and the product owner, while helping resolve the environment issue. Action: I first confirmed the issue by checking logs and configuration differences between environments. Then, I explained that the code itself was deployed, but the feature could not be tested because the environment was missing a required configuration. I clearly separated. Check. Application code status. Check. Deployment status. Check. Environment configuration issue. Check. Testing impact. Check. Expected next steps. I coordinated with the DevOps team to update the missing configuration. I also updated the deployment documentation to include that environment variable. To prevent confusion, I posted a status update in the ticket. RCheck, deployed version, check, environment issue identified, owner of configuration FIPS, expected retest step, check, smoke test checklist. Result: the environment issue was fixed. QA resumed testing with clear status information. The documentation update prevented the same configuration issue in later deployments. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows key environment troubleshooting, clear status communication, clear DevOps collaboration, QA coordination, documentation improvement, preventing repeat delay. Example 7. Explaining a delay due to code review feedback situation. In one sprint, I completed a pull request for a backend feature. During code review, a senior developer pointed out that the implementation worked, but duplicated validation logic already present in another service. Task: I needed to explain that the story would take longer because I needed to refactor the implementation before merging. Action: I reviewed the feedback carefully and agreed that the concern was valid. Then, I explained the delay to the Scrum Master and product owner. I said the feature worked functionally, but merging it as is would increase technical debt and make future changes harder. I explained the risk. Click. Duplicate validation logic. Click. Inconsistent behavior later. Click. More regression testing in future. Click. Harder maintainability. Click. More code review issues later. I proposed a focused refactor instead of a large rewrite. The plan was extract common validation to use the shared validator, extract add unit tests, extract run regression tests, extract update the pull request description. Result: the story took longer, but the final implementation was cleaner. The pull request was approved. The shared validation logic reduced future duplication and made the code easier to maintain. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows check. Accepting code review feedback. Check. Explaining delay professionally. Technical debt awareness. Maintainability focus. Quality over rushing. Team trust. Example 8. explaining a delay due to data migration validation situation. In one release, we had to migrate customer records from an old data model to a new one. The migration script was ready, but during a test run, we found records with missing required fields and unclear status mappings. Task: I needed to explain to stakeholders that the migration should not proceed until the data issues were reviewed and validated. Action: I gathered evidence from the test migration. I summarized. Check. Records processed. Check. Successful records. Skipped records. Duplicate records. Missing required fields. Unclear status mappings. Records needing manual review. Then I explained the risk in business terms. If we migrated without validation, incorrect or incomplete records could appear in the new system. That could create support issues and business data problems. I proposed a safer approach. Generate an error report. Review unclear records with business users. Confirm status mapping rules. Correct invalid records where possible. Rerun the test migration. Validate record counts before production. Result: the production migration was delayed, but the delay prevented bad data from entering the new system. The business team helped confirm the mapping rules. The final migration was completed more safely and with better confidence. Why? This answer works. This answer is good because it shows C. Data migration risk communication. C. Evidence-based delay explanation. C. Business stakeholder alignment. C. Validation process. C. Quality and data integrity. Best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say, in one sprint, I was working on a customer profile update API. The initial estimate looks straightforward, but during implementation, I noticed that the requirement did not clearly define which fields were editable by normal users and which fields were admin only. I communicated the delay risk early to the product owner, QA, and Scrum Master. I explained that if we implemented the authorization rules based on assumptions, we could create security issues or rework during QA. I proposed a short clarification meeting. In that discussion, we confirmed the role-based rules, updated the acceptance criteria, and documented the expected behavior. After that, I implemented backend authorization, service layer permission checks, audit logging, and tests for admin and non-admin users. The story took slightly longer than expected, but the team avoided building the wrong behavior. QA had clear test scenarios, and the feature was delivered correctly and securely. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Waiting until the last minute. Bad answer. I told them about the delay on the final day. Better answer. I communicated the delay risk as soon as I identified the issue. 2. Making excuses. Bad answer. It was delayed because the requirement was bad. Better answer. The requirement had unclear authorization rules, so I raised the risk and helped clarify the behavior. 3. Explaining only the problem. Bad answer. I told them it would be late. Better answer. I explained the reason, impact, options, and mitigation plan. 4. Giving no updated plan. Bad answer. I said it would take longer. Better answer. I proposed a clarification meeting, revised scope, and clear next steps. 5. Hiding quality risk. Bad answer. I rushed it to avoid delay. Better answer. I explained that releasing without the fix could create defects, so we chose a safer path. Best practices for answering this question. Key: use the STAR method. Communicate early. Explain the reason clearly. Avoid blaming others. Separate facts from assumptions. Explain the impact. Provide options. Give a mitigation plan. Update stakeholders regularly. End with the final result and lesson learned. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can communicate delays professionally, manage expectations, take ownership, avoid surprises, explain technical issues in business terms, provide realistic plans, protect quality and delivery, work well under pressure. For senior roles, they also want to see, yes, risk communication, stakeholder management, priority trade-off handling, release judgment, scope negotiation, production ownership, ability to preserve trust during difficult updates. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like communicated early, explained the impact, clarified, updated stakeholders, proposed options, mitigated, adjusted scope, prioritized, coordinated, reduced risk, protected quality, managed expectations. Example: I explained the delay early by sharing the reason, the impact, the options, and the mitigation plan, so stakeholders had enough time to make an informed decision. Good delay explanation topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about: check, unclear requirements; check, external API dependency; check, production bug priority; check, hidden technical complexity; check, QA defect retesting; check, environment issue; check, code review refactor; check, data migration validation; check, missing test data; delayed downstream service; check, deployment approval delay; check, security review feedback; issue found late; regression testing required; scope change during sprint. Final summary. Tell me about a time you had to explain a delay is an important interview question, because software projects often face changing priorities, blockers, defects, and technical complexity. The best answer should include: what caused the delay, when you noticed it, who you informed, how you explained the reason, what impact it had, what options you gave, what mitigation plan you proposed, what result happened, what you learned. Good examples include: check, unclear requirement delay; external dependency delay; production bug priority; hidden complexity; QA defect retesting; environment issue; integration; code review refactor; data migration validation. The strongest answers show honesty, ownership, early communication, realistic planning, stakeholder trust, and quality-first decision-making.